I want to talk salary negotiation because I suspect this is of top of mind for a lot of people, and everyone welcomes advice on this topic. So, Pamela, what advice do you have for negotiating salary and or other aspects of the total package? And have you seen changes in the approach now that more and more states and localities are requiring more transparency and actually require the salary range to be included in the job posting?
Yeah, it's made it a little bit more interesting. So two changes. One, that multiple states now are requiring companies to put a salary range in the job posting. Now, some companies get cute by putting like the range as 30,000 to 230,000 or something. Not at all. So you got to watch out for that. That tells you something about, I don't know if this company is 100% upfront and honest here. But the other factor that comes into play more in certain states is they're not supposed to ask you what you're currently making. And that was a very common question. And it did lead to people being stuck in underpaid roles because the next salary was always based on the previous and the slight increase on the previous. And if you somehow accepted a role that was underpaid for whatever reason, then you kind of get stuck there. So the idea with the laws around that were to make sure people are being paid what they're worth in the market and not have it stuck on a decision you made 10 years ago, right? So they should not be asking you, what are you making now? In some states, I guess it's still okay. There are ways to deflect that, whatever you can do to avoid bringing up that number of what you're making now, or even what you're looking to make. That's perfectly okay to ask. What are you looking for in terms of compensation? But if you can avoid that until later in the conversation, once you've established leverage, once they love you, right? So you don't want to, especially if you think you might be a little on the high side, you don't want to knock yourself out before they love you. So if you can, one of the things I suggest people do, if they can, is say something like, well, I'm really excited about this role and I'm sure, it's a competitive salary. So I'm sure it'll be fine, or I'm looking for a competitive salary, whatever you can do to make it clear, look, I'm not cheap. I'm looking for what's fair, but I'm not going to name a number quite yet. If you can do it nicely, if you can't deflect completely, giving a range so that you then still have room to negotiate within. The longer you wait, the more leverage you have. Like I said, they like you. It's probably down to fewer candidates. Maybe you're the finalist, and so they're going to be more apt to want to give you what you want. So those are a few of the things to keep in mind. I would also say one of my tips for negotiating is negotiate. Don't think you can't negotiate. I mean, certainly don't negotiate if you're totally happy with the offer and it's more than you wanted. Don't do it just for the sake of doing it. But I think a lot of people shy away from negotiating, even attempting to negotiate. And I think it's important to, I mean, most companies are very open to you coming back and doing it in a respectful way, expressing appreciation for the offer that was given and excitement about the opportunity, and then saying, hey, based on my research, I was expecting maybe something more in this range. How do you feel about that? What can they do? They can say no. And then you make a decision based on what they offer. Or you can then come back to them, as Carrie referred to, and say, okay, well, that's fine, but what other things can we negotiate? Maybe flexible hours, maybe there's some sort of bonuses or some sort of guarantee that we're going to renegotiate salary at the 6-month mark if I meet these milestones. There's a lot of things you can negotiate on to make it a better deal for you that are not strictly salary.
Excellent. Excellent. So I'm hearing one of the keys is timing, and wherever possible, avoid being nailed to that specificity until much later in the process when you have more leverage, and make sure that you've done your homework and also know your rights. Because Kate said, I think it was Kate, that happened to her where she ended up getting stuck at a lower comp level because they based her pay based on her previous role versus value for that particular position. We have a question from Warda. What about promotion? Can we negotiate there? And what if during the process, they, HR, say others in that new role don't make as much as I'm making?
Yeah, I think you can. Certainly when you're talking about a promotion, you might have more information as an employee about what the salary bands are and what their ability to to give you more is, and sort of evaluating whether the HR person is telling the truth versus trying to get you for less, right? So I think it is a business proposal in the end, right? So if they come back to you and say, well, this is what we're paying others, you can come back to them and have a few bullet points saying, well, based on my research, this is what I think is the right rate, and here's why. I have this experience. I have these proven accomplishments at the company. I know I'm going to hit the ground running. I don't need a learning curve. And so I think being able to make the business case for the higher salary to help you there. And yeah, no guarantees, but I would always try.
Well, historically,
Yes.
so many companies have promoted from within. And one of the reasons they do it is because it saves them money, that you're more likely to take a marginal increase versus if many people would leave the company to get that role and have a higher pay. And then they would have the onboarding cost too. So I think it's a mistake for companies not to offer internal candidates the promotional value that they would have to pay to an external candidate. So know what that value is.